Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the planet. Thank you so much for joining this conversation with my dear friend, Mia Kyricos, based in Maine, the state when you drive through that welcomes you with a big billboard that says, the way life should be. And so it is. Uh, Mia, you've been advising, leading wellness, travel, tourism, spa, hospitality brands for the past 20 years in over 100 countries. I thought I was traveling a lot. Oops, no. You recently were the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Wellbeing at Hyatt, curator of the company's global wellbeing strategy for commercial health and wellness related products, services, events, partnerships, and also looking after the well-being of 130,000 associates with wellness at work, corporate wellness programs. You also served as the vice president of Exos, overseeing the workplace wellness division, operating on the campuses of big companies like Google and Intel. Of course, before that, and this is when I met you a few years ago, when you were director of global spa brands at Starwood Hotel and Resorts, you led the creation of 6 international spa brands, and also you were overseeing the 60 wellness travel destinations across 26 cities, countries, for the Starwood Spa Collection. If this was not enough, you have been also serving on the boards of the Global Wellness Summit, the Global Wellness Institute, UC Irvine, the advisory board of Cornell University, your alma mater, and you were named the Global Leading Woman of the Year for the Global Wellness Institute and Summit, and Cornell University named you the Innovator of the Year. Some people say all of this to introduce you. I'm just happy to be your friend, Mia.
I'm very happy to be your friend. I clearly don't need a publicist with John Gee in my corner. But I'm really happy to be here. And I think it's quite the day to be talking about wellness for all. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. This conversation about wellness for all is really springing from the third Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations, good health and well-being for all. I know usually you remove the dash of well-being to have it in one word, and so many times I've seen you on social media saying, please remove the dash. So good health and well-being for all, not just all who can pay, the clients, the members, but also the associates, the local communities. And this is really important. So let's dive right in, because World Wellness Weekend is just around the corner. In 9 days, World Wellness Weekend will be celebrated by 9,100 venues in 155 countries, supported by over 40 mayors, governors, ministers of health and tourism, including today, on September 11th, the Minister of Tourism in Uruguay having a press conference and declaring World Wellness Weekend an event of national interest to promote wellness tourism in Uruguay. So there's a lot happening. So happy to kick off this conversation, maybe focusing on guests and members. What have you seen through your travels that really piqued your interest, taking wellness to the next level?
Sure. I mean, I think very simply, there are more options to consume wellness now than ever before, and lots of different hybrid solutions. When I think about some innovations over the last couple of years, I think of Zero Hotels, very much exclusively focused on fitness and wellness for their guests, really targeting like amateur athletes and others that are trying to keep up with their routines on the road. I think that's a really interesting development. I think the fact that we're seeing expansion of tried and true destination spa and wellness brands like Shaw Wellness coming out of Spain and going to Mexico. That's exciting to see. And also brands that have gotten their start here in the US, like The Well is now expanding overseas in Europe, really catering to communities, catering to colleagues, consumers, really becoming part of the fabric of the communities, not just a hotel spa as we've seen years ago when we first started connecting about wellness for all. So I'm just excited about the different manifestations that we're seeing and the new brands that are surfacing and existing brands that are finally expanding after years of just being single units.
Indeed, for a lot of people, longevity, recovery is really the buzzword of this year. We were discussing with Anna, and she definitely expanded on it about the soft part of wellness, but also some serious wellness. And I think you have a different take on longevity.
I love longevity. I think that has been the outcome we're all seeking, longer life, but quality of life being really essential in our wellness offerings for quite some time. I think the difference is that we're focusing on the words and not the access. And that's the part that I really feel like is the work that's to be done. I love Anna. I think she's amazing. And I think she's right about talking about longevity really as what are getting consumers out of bed to focus on their wellness. But I think the layer that we need to talk about is the science and the medicine that's available today for us to be more prescriptive and get ahead of the world's worst diseases. It exists, but we're not getting it to the people that need it most. And I think that's where the work is to be done as part of your effort to bring shine a light on wellness for all. We need to make Wellness 101 available to the average human being around the world. And that's going to take public and private partnerships to bring it to life. It's with government, with private practice, with healthcare. And so that's the part that gets me out of bed to think it's not just for preventing disease or focusing on the years we're going to live. It's how do we add quality to our years and how do we use the best of science that's available today and give it to the people who need it most.
Indeed. And before we dive into the staff, the associates, because this is really important, especially since COVID with the rise of stress and mental issues, let's stay a little bit with wellness, longevity, which is true, mainly accessible to the well-offs, the one that really can afford the Shah, the Chenot resort, the Chenot Palace in Switzerland, maybe the Lanzerhof in Austria and Germany, maybe the Canyon Ranch Miraval in the US, and so on. And what about the rest who cannot afford but do need to take care of their 5 pillars of wellness: sleep and creativity, nutrition and immunity, movement and vitality, mindfulness and serenity, and maybe their sense of purpose and solidarity. It's true that over the years, and we've seen this several times with the Global Wellness Institute and Summit, the research on DNA testing has become more affordable. Mm-hmm. And 21andMe and others are helping also people to understand. But what have you seen when you say it takes public and private to really make it accessible to the population? I know you've been traveling extensively across the US, Mexico, also in Africa. What have you seen that helps local communities dwell as well as they can?
Number one, education. So I do think education has missed the mark historically, and letting people know that it really is a partnership between what we take self-care responsibly, that we make that a priority, but that needs to be taught. A lot of people do not understand what factors, sleep effect, right? Or, we can all take established wellness habits at a young age. As long as we understand what they are, how we sleep, how we move, how we eat, how we manage our stress, how we connect with the people around us, which in more tribal nations, which I was able to go to, for example, in Tanzania and Africa, you learn that really so much of their well-being is tied to how they show up in the community and how they feel responsible for others. And so I really do think it's self-care, which comes from education, and then it's more connected care with really connecting with the people in community, caring for your neighbors, making sure they're well, they have access to food, water, that they feel safe in the community. I mean, these are some really basic things. And then how is it that governments and healthcare institutions are showing up for the communities where they reside? Are they thinking about how they're master planning communities to be, whether more walkable, are they looking at the pollution side of the equation? Are they helping to build, whether it's access to food in more first world, third world countries? Is it access to sidewalks and parks in more established companies? There's a wide gamut. And then healthcare. How are they partnered to be part of the solution? Because I often chuckle that hospitality and hospitals have the same root word, but they're anonyms, right? We should be checking in and checking out of hospitals. It should not be a place that's just a one-way door. And we need to care for patients as we do our guests. And we need to, they need to feel comfortable that they're connected with private practice and they're connected with municipal governments. And they're all partnering to help individuals and families and communities that also take responsibility for themselves and each other. So it really is a big ecosystem of well-being, which is what we talk about at my company. It really is, everyone has a role to play, but they need to play it together.
With Kyricos and Associates, absolutely. I'll give you three quick examples of what's happening with World Wellness Weekend, especially reaching out for community, because it's really touching my heart when I see that it's not just, when we started with World Wellness Weekend, it was mainly spas and hotels and resorts organizing a yoga session, a mindfulness session, a sound bath, and we still have a lot of that for guests and members, and everyone was really happy. And then 5 Elements retreats in Bali with John Nielsen, the GM, thought of going one step further, which is, yes, there's a yoga session, you can stretch, you can breathe. Yes, there's a fitness session. If you want, you can get your heartbeat a little faster, you can get a good sweat, you can get this rush of endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin. And when you feel that great, maybe, just maybe, no pressure, you may want to donate a little bit of your blood, a pint of blood, because the Red Cross is waiting. They have a van in front. And maybe you could turn this wellness that you feel inside of you into a pint of blood for someone with a procedure or maybe a car accident. If the GM was asking clients, how do you feel? I feel great. What is your blood type? And most of the times it's A+. So he said, if you came with A+, do you feel that maybe symbolically now your blood is A++? Yes. Would you like to donate some A++ blood for the Red Cross? That's one example, turning wellness, a class, into blood, and hopefully helping save lives. In Buenos Aires, there was a collective of wellness professionals who knew each other, knew of each other, were seeing each other, but they each had their own small practice. Personal trainer, a therapist, and they usually have small spaces. So they wanted to do something big, but each were physically constrained in a small venue. So they decided, because on the Southern Hemisphere, as we turn into fall, autumn, they welcome spring. So it was spring, the weather was getting finer, and they decided to meet near a lake. And each of them, 10, reached out to their clients base and decided to invite all of their clients and ask them to come with their mat, their smile, a bottle of water, a friend maybe, and some non-perishable food. No obligation, But at the end of the day, the 10 hours of classes happened, hundreds of people joined, and there were 285 kilos of non-perishable food shared with 3 associations. So passing it to people who have possibly never heard of World Wellness Weekend, but benefiting because they need it the most. And the last example that I give, and then we dive into staff, associates, and hosts, is the example currently this year of the mayor of Santo Domingo in the capital of the Dominican Republic. She was very impressed by Flavio Acuna, our ambassador, amazing ambassador over there. We even call him Fantastico Flavio. That's or sometimes we don't even call him Flavio. We just say Fantastico. So and he knows he knows it's him. He is really reaching out to the global hotels, resorts, sports associations, the Rotary clubs, and he reached out to the mayor of Santo Domingo saying, is it going to be only Punta Cana celebrating World Wellness Weekend all across? Or the capital has something to say? She said, yes, what can we do? Well, you have parks, and there could be fun, free, inclusive activities in your parks during the World Wellness Weekend. She says, I think I have a better idea. I'm going to requisition all of the 94 parks without exception of anyone. And I'm going to organize with our team, reaching out to the local practitioners in the city, about 2,000 activities over a matter of 3 days. And we're not going to stop after September 22nd, when the World Wellness Weekend ends. We have many more weekends after that. We have great weather, and people should continue to practice yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, like they do in Asia and around the world. So it's really, really taking pace.
That's fantastic. You should be very proud of the progress of World Wellness Weekend. And it's very gratifying to hear that it's really going to every corner of the globe. So well done.
Thank you, especially with the support of local officials, because there's a point when we can be the part of the standing ovation as hospitality, fitness, beauty, wellness practitioners. There's only so much we can give. And then when we catch the attention of lawmakers, they can say, and now we'll have it, and we'll give you the billboards, and we'll give a shout out, and people will know. So there's recognition. And as you usually say, a high tide raises all boats. So it really serves all purposes. I'm conscious of time, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you, and I'm too chatty, but I just wanted also to give you an update of what's happening out there.
That's great.
You have been leading the charge, not just with Hyatt and 130,000 employees, associates, thinking of their corporate wellness, and of course of the guests and the members, but with the Hyatt experiences, but also before that with Exos and the campuses of huge companies like Google and Intel. So what have you seen, or what are you still seeing on the side of corporate wellness for associates, hosts, and staff?
Well, I think, and thank you for highlighting that work. The work in the early days, and I'm going to say in the last 10 years or so, really up until the pandemic, was focused on programs. Corporate wellness, like what programs can we bring? What fitness programs can we put healthy dining in our corporate cafeterias? Can we give them access to Headspace or Calm via app? Can we have a Wellness Wednesday? It was very programmatic. I think what we learned, particularly as we knew there was a mental health crisis before the pandemic, and then that only worsened throughout the pandemic, we started realizing that those programs were irrelevant and would not be used and go unused if they felt that companies lacked an overall culture of wellness and well-being. And what I learned is that those that felt chained to their desks, even remote workers that felt they couldn't leave, did not feel like they could access or prioritize the programs that were being offered, mostly because they didn't feel comfortable taking vacation or not checking email at night or on the weekends, or frankly, not feeling part of the team or recognized for the work that they are doing. And so what's happened in recent history is we've shifted from corporate well-being equal programs to corporate well-being needing to be about culture. And the reality is that's actually a lot less expensive, but it has the cost of behavior change. And if you don't have your leaders modeling a workforce, if you're not, just speaking about the problems in a business, but highlighting what's going well, if you aren't just highlighting the weaknesses, but also the strengths, if you are not, making it okay for people to truly rely on each other when they take the vacation time that Americans are guilty of not taking in the first place,
Yes.
you know, um, the cultural part. And that is a longer road and a bigger hill to climb, but it's the difference between checking the box and making well-being part of your DNA. And so that's where the work needs to be done. I think there are some companies that are starting to figure that out, and they're realizing that the programs are a nice to have, but not a need to have in absence of that culture. And they're realizing it in different ways, whether it's making sure that leadership is talking about it. I think of companies that went fully remote during the pandemic and are not changing because they're trying to really meet colleagues where they're happiest to work when they're showing up the best they can. I think of companies like Skift. I mean, Rafat Ali has very successfully done that with a global company, and it really is the #1 intelligence platform for travel and hospitality. I think of a lesser known company called Juicer from the restaurant industry. They've done the same. They're headquartered in Austria by a classmate of mine, Ashwin Kamlani, who I went to Cornell with. They're doing the same thing because in their mind, to be a global company, they needed to bring in they needed to better meet their colleagues where they were at. And that's just 2 examples. I'm not saying remote is for everybody, but those were 2 leaders that acknowledged a need to foster a culture of well-being in different ways beyond fitness, nutrition, and sleep. And I think we need to really, really understand what's important to our colleagues to best care for their well-being.
Agreed. What about the chief wellness officer, the chief happiness officer that has been discussed and presented a few years ago? Are they thriving? Are companies really implementing this important role, or is it still lip service?
The answer is yes and no. So it
Ooh,
depends on the industry. So unfortunately, we've seen a downturn in travel and hospitality where we have very deep roots in terms of really prioritizing those roles, but more so in actually big business and Fortune 1000 companies. I think for companies that are inherently well and it's championed from the CEO down, they don't necessarily need that role. But for those that are struggling, they're seeing a lot of data. They're seeing their colleagues answering surveys poorly about the environment or the climate that they're working in. They're noticing that people aren't showing up as healthy as they need to be, and so forth. That is something that does require a dedicated role to work in matrixed organizations and really foster an ecosystem of well-being across employees, consumers, communities, leaders, and even the planet. Because if we're going to really care for wellness for all, it needs to be people, planet, and community. And so we have seen some decline in those roles. We've seen industries that have yet to establish them, but because I'm a glass half full person,
yes.
2 industries that I am seeing regularly post these jobs on LinkedIn is healthcare, which, given what they've been through globally, who is surprised? No one. That they really are trying to bring in chief wellness officers to partner with chief medical officers to better care for healthcare workers, which we need to do so they can care for us. And university. Remember, I mentioned education. There are universities in the United States that are hiring that role to either care for the well-being of students, for faculty, or both. And so that's giving me hope watching those 2 industries flourish, and I hope others follow suit.
Excellent. What about wellness communities? A few years ago, you co-authored a fantastic report. And I believe the fundamentals of that report are still very valid today. Numbers may change, numbers of products, deliveries, the pipeline, but the fundamentals are still true. and I have my eyes on you. I'll be celebrating 55 in a few months. Um, but the idea is that when I turn 70 or 75, you tell me where to go, which community
Absolutely.
living I should join, because there's no way I'm going to a senior living housing. I want the Six Senses feel, the Canyon Ranch feel. So what's happening on the front of community living, community residences, and real estate?
Well, the good news is that's one of the fastest growing segments of I mean, it is a billions of dollars business. The real estate community has really bought into this concept of developing real estate that cares for the well-being of its residents, for its community, for its local residents, and even the environment. And so it's exploding. I mean, there are projects everywhere around the world of those that are really trying to think about what elements, as we develop this community, whether it's in a city, a suburb, or elsewhere, will actually leave the residents healthier than if they had gone to a generic counterpart, right? And so they're asking that question, and it is growing. It's one of the fastest growing segments of the $5.6 trillion wellness economy. As you've seen, the Global Wellness Institute has actually created an own event that they have in May of every year in New York that is literally a wellness real estate symposium, because there's been so much demand for support from developers around the globe. Richard Gere
Indeed.
even attended the last one because he was so focused and committed to developing wellness communities and real estate. So it's exploding. I think you will have a good selection of options, Jean-Guy, when you get to that age. But quite honestly, we all should be living in communities that are more wellness for all, as you've said, right? And it doesn't have to be the 5-star or $1 million buy-in. There are basic things that we can do to foster wellness communities at every level of society and on every country in the world. And so
Absolutely.
we are responsible for that.
Absolutely. And one very good example of that is Serenbe and
Yes.
Steve Green. And you've visited the place several times over a course of years. Can you give us an insight on where
Sure.
they are? Because they were building neighborhood after neighborhood, one about culture, one about fine living. So where are they? What have you seen recently?
They have skyrocketed. I mean, when I went there, I think there was maybe 400 homes. I believe there's over 1,000 now. They've developed several different neighborhoods. They focused not just on the options for the residents to stay well and the community to stay well together, but they've also built homes that are built to be with reverence for the environment, and also to reduce the operating costs of energy. They have done so many smart things, from how they manage their trash to how they foster community service, agriculture, to the programs they bring available, to how they manage nature and trails and access to walking, to how they care for the well-being of children with berries that are only edible, as they go through the forest. I mean, there's so many amazing examples of how the community was well even before they offered any sort of spa or fitness or things that we've been used to. I first visited in 2012, and I felt that community was well 12 years ago, before all the bells and whistles that have come, with time. And I think it comes down to two things. The Niagarans have been amazing, but it has been intuition and intention that have guided them to the extraordinary community that they are today. And I do think it's one of the best models out there.
Absolutely. I highly encourage everyone to check it up. Serenbe near Atlanta in Georgia. One thing that really caught my attention is when, after a few years, they published a study about health benefits of living there. And two markers, there were several, but two really caught my attention. A, the fact that kids with asthma before moving into Serenbe didn't have symptoms of asthma after a few months or years living at Serenbe. And also couples deciding to leave the bustle, the hustle and bustle of the city, to move into a quiet neighborhood, and who at the time had the desire of a child and could not, then those women finally could give birth and were expecting. So living healthily without a spa or the amenities, the community living had really an impact on the health benefits for breathing and for building a family. That was remarkable.
Absolutely.
I am conscious of time, and I did ask you for 30 minutes. We did start 30 seconds
Yes.
late, so maybe I have an extra minute with you. After wellness for guests and members, wellness for staff and associates, wellness for communities, what about wellness for you, Mia, and your husband? Because I know when you talk about berries, I follow you on social media. When it's berry season, it's cobbler season.
Yes. And pie season and everything. Yes.
The pumpkin are going to be quite trendy with Halloween. There's going to be, I believe, pumpkin pies and pumpkin soup.
Yes.
But before we head to Halloween, what about September 20, 21st, and 22nd? Where will you be? What will you do? Who will you be with, if you may share?
I will be with my husband because for me, it's that
Mr. O.
connection is the most important in my life. We're actually going to go visit some Angolan families who are seeking religious asylum in Maine, and we've helped to establish and get it into housing and having clothing. And one just had a baby, and another couple's getting married. And so, our plan after I meditate in the morning and after I take some seaside yoga with a bunch of friends in a park, and maybe even have a breakfast picnic. I will go with James and we'll go visit them. They live in a variety of areas. There's 7 families. And so we will be visiting them and caring for their well-being while spending time with each other, which is how we'll take care of ours.
So meaningful. True sleep, nutrition, movement, mindfulness. But this little piggy here with purpose and solidarity can definitely move the world. Last year, we said that wellness is a renewable energy that can light up the world. And it's high time to renew our energy so that we can light up our world. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. I know you were a big fan of Wim Hof,
yes,
breathing techniques.
yes,
On the Wellness Weekend, I encourage you maybe to tune in 2 hours time when we speak with Peter Cater, or next week when he
yes,
releases a global launch. He wanted to launch his new Breathwork series early September because everyone was back to school, back at work, back from the holidays. So maybe take another breath, but he decided to launch it across the world with Mindstream, a company you know well,
yes.
as they support and are very active with the Global Wellness Summit with Freddie Moros that we will see at the Global Wellness Summit in Scotland. So Peter Cater, a 14 times a Grammy Award nominee and 2 times Grammy Award winner, will be releasing and his Breathwork series with the World Wellness Weekend, with World Cleanup Day on the Friday 20th, with International Day of Peace on the 21st, and with the Equinox on the 22nd. So maybe that's something you can look up on World Wellness Weekend and maybe try his fantastic new series.
I would love that. That would be great.
Excellent.
I just made a note. Thank you.
Mia, I know your name starts with an M, but can we have a wealthy for World Wellness Weekend?
Yes, we
It
can.
is such a pleasure. Efkaristopoli, my friend, for
Parakolopoli.
joining
My pleasure.
and for being the inspiration you have been for the past 20 years. I remember the years at the time when I was starting my education and consulting company. We're celebrating 20 years this year, and you were all over the magazines. You were leading the charge with Starwood, and then you continued, and you were rising star, still shining bright, because it's not so much that you want to expand your knowledge and be only the light. You are lighting up so many lights around you, encouraging them to also search for themselves and raising this generation of operators. So thank you for who you are, not just for what you've done for our profession.
Thank you, Jean-Guy, and thank you for all that you're doing for all of us around the world. It's amazing, and I am happy to follow in your footsteps. So thank you.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.